We as black people, especially in the diaspora, but even on the continent too, seem to have a kind of racial self-confidence, a collective racial self-confidence that is lacking, especially when we juxtapose with other people whom we consider to be the real thing, the closer thing. So we have a joke when so we overcompensate. So we have a joke. We say when we become Christians, we become more Catholic than the Pope. When we become socialist, communist, Marxists, we become, more Marxist than Karl Marx and Engels themselves. And when we become Muslim, we become more Muslim than the Ayatollah. It used to be the joke. Because we have this need to display our credentials. You know the way Donald Trump asked Obama to display his birth certificate. And Paul Obama did it. Because they do this to us. We always have to go that extra mile to prove we belong in the club. So sometimes you go to Saudi Arabia, meet black Saudi Arabians, they have the most Saudi Arabian Arabic accent of all. You go to the East End of London, you meet some black kids, man, and they speak Cockney worse than Mockney. This is proper Cockney on any East Londoner. So there is something in our people which makes us shed or surrender some of our blackness in order to not be suspect, I think is the best way I want to put it. We hope that we would not be looked at. You see, we are because we can't change what we look like and sometimes what we sound like you just said, my voice is deep. Sometimes you listen to a black voice on a call-in show on the radio and you know that person's black because of the depth of the voice. But putting that aside, but it's mostly about how we look. Because we can't change what we look like, despite the fact that my name might be Michael Jones. I am English. I may speak English like Trevor McDonald on ITV. I may speak English as fluently as British, a form of English as that. I may dress in as Western a manner as all get out. The fact is, unlike the Irishman, unlike the Jewish fellow, who can change his name from Weitzman to Winston, or the Irishman who can change his accent in one generation, like James O'Brien on LBC. And no one will know he's Irish unless you look at his surname, and you can change that too, like the Jews have done. The blacks can't do that. So we overcompensate in every other way to show that we are fully functioning members of the club, whether it's the Western Democratic Club, the Muslim Club, the Christian Club, whatever we do it. And perhaps this tendency towards getting into suicide bombing is a function of that. We have to prove ourselves now to be like we are as Muslim as that Algerian who's doing it, or that Afghan who's doing it. We do this all the time. And it comes down to, as I say, when people are starting the race, and these are the starting blocks here, our starting point is somewhere there. So we overcompensate to catch up to here. And it shows itself in a mass of dysfunctions. People tell us we are fortunate in that we have no culture. That's like saying there's a form of music without rhythm. That's impossible. But people tell us we have no culture. So we say, and then they say, and that's a good thing, because now you can start your Islam tabula rasa, clean slate. That's ridiculous. It assumes that culture, as I often say, it makes of culture the C word. It makes culture something dirty, something suspect. Now, yes, there's good and bad culture, like yes, there's good and bad cholesterol. Yeah, you have things in the person's culture that have no place any longer being there, if it ever had at all. We were having a discussion about beating children. And the jury is still out as to whether that's a function or a dysfunction, a merit or a demerit, a virtue or a vice, a good bit of a culture or a bad bit. There you have it. That's a very good example. And the extent to which we discovered Caribbean children, at least Trinidadian children, were beaten, Caribbean people were beaten as children, it is as high a rate of circumcision or FGM in the Somali community. It's just that you wouldn't know about it until you get a room of Trinidadians together and say, how many of you were beaten as children? Almost everybody will put their hand up. Almost everybody. It's just something that people don't talk about, especially in this part of the world, because the mere looking at a person crossways is a form of abuse now, and nobody wants to be accused of being the one who abused. So nobody talks about things like that. So this tendency to me towards, and I don't know that your question implies there's a lot of it about. I don't think there's a lot of it. I mean, black people tending towards suicide bombing and terrorism, and I don't think they ever will be. I personally don't think so. I think this entire phenomenon will spend itself.